This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. If it is a day of the week, it must be time for Donald Trump and his lawyers to try to lie to and mislead a judge about a case that they're presiding over. What are we talking about now? E. Jean Carroll's case, her second one, this time for punitive damages in the tens of millions of dollars against Donald Trump, starts in federal court on Tuesday. And Donald Trump knows no shame and has tried in two different court proceedings to try to use the excuse, and that's what I'm going to call it, of the death of his mother-in-law and her funeral on Thursday in Florida as an excuse to delay the inevitable, which is court proceedings that involve him and hundreds of millions of dollars. Last week, we told you here on the MeidasTouch network and on Legal AF that Donald Trump was trying to use the excuse of his mother-in-law dying to try to postpone outright the New York civil fraud case closing arguments, the ones that Donald Trump ended up appearing at, because, I don't know, he was in mourning over the death of his mother-in-law and he couldn't do anything else. That can't be it, because he was on the campaign trail and posting on social media regularly all about these things. So that was an excuse that Judge Engoron completely ignored as being untrue, and it couldn't possibly be the reason why they needed to delay the closing arguments over one day, a week before the mother-in-law's actual funeral. But Donald Trump, knowing no shame, likes to attack the judges for being what he calls heartless, because they won't give him a free pass to take off unlimited amounts of time in order to attend a funeral of his mother-in-law. And he tried it again. He tried to mislead the federal judge, Judge Kaplan. And instead of doing what you're supposed to do in federal court practice, which I know well from practicing in that particular courthouse, which is you send a motion, a well-prepared motion supported by a declaration under oath by somebody like Donald Trump, in which you say, these are the reasons that I need a delay in the proceedings that have already been set. In this case, the trial set for Tuesday. And, here's my doctor's note, or here's the funeral arrangements, or here's on this particular moment in time, there's no way I could make it. Here's the funeral director's declaration. Here's the declaration from Melania, all the things that would support, from an evidentiary standpoint, your request to delay the inevitable. That's not what Donald Trump's lawyers did. Donald Trump's lawyers did what they did in the New York State Supreme Court. They lobbed in an email like it was just a clerical issue or administrative issue that could be dealt with, the delay for a week of the trial. And they said, the mother-in-law died. He's got to go to the funeral. We need to postpone this trial. And the judge took one look at that. And it was completely unsupported by any declarations or affidavits or proper motion practice. The other side hadn't responded to it. And we're getting awfully close to the trial. So the judge on his own, what we call sua sponte, issued an order that said denied. The trial goes forward. I'm sorry, my condolences, but the trial goes forward as planned. We've got a jury panel, what's called a jury veneer, that's already been selected. It's usually up to 40 or 50 people. They've already cleared their decks and made their arrangements to come in. And then you've got all the other things that go along with Donald Trump attending a trial, which is security measures and Secret Service and federal marshals and the like. We know when Donald Trump's circus comes to town on purpose, it's done for maximum collateral damage and impact and show. And so mindful of that, Judge Kaplan, the judge, denied it. I am sure part of the reason he denied the trial, and we have a new order by him today explaining exactly why he did that, including that he believes he was hoodwinked in a footnote where he says, well, you say you can't make the trial. You're going to New Hampshire on Wednesday night for a rally, for a fundraiser or whatever you're doing. He said it matter-of-factly, but I'm sure the judge was annoyed. The judge is probably annoyed at Donald Trump going back to the first trial. Remember, this is the E. Jean Carroll second trial. This one for punitive damages for statements Donald Trump made while he was president of the United States and defamed her, having raped her, sexually assaulted her in a dressing room in New York in the 1990s, and then lied about it and defamed her as a result. Said that she was crazy, a crackpot, look at her, not my type. She's shaking me down. It's a hoax, things like that. And the judge has already declared that on liability, Donald Trump is dead. He's cooked. His goose is cooked. It's already been found as a matter of law that he did defame her. The only issue for this jury that's going to be picked on Tuesday, and I'll tell you about that procedure in a minute, is how big of a check they're going to have Donald Trump write for punitive damages and actual damages for having defamed her again, intentionally inflicting emotional distress and the like on her. That's the only purpose of the jury in this case. Now, the reason why the request is ridiculous and an obvious attempt as a sham for Donald Trump to lie to another court is because of if you line it up against the procedures and the logistics of what's going to happen at the trial. And then, as I said before, there's a backstory here, which I'm sure annoyed the judge. Let me tell the backstory first, then we'll fast forward to what's going to happen on Tuesday. And then I'll line it up with the Thursday funeral in Florida, which he can fly in for in the morning on his supersonic jet or whatever he flies around in. Trump won. What happened last time is that Donald Trump elected not to attend any day at all, from jury selection, opening statements, the case in chief for the plaintiff, the case in chief for the defense, closing arguments in the first E. Jean Carroll case. Not at all. In fact, Joe Tacopina is quoted as saying at that time, and let me get the exact quote, that the logistical and financial burdens were concerning to Donald Trump, and that's why, Your Honor, my client is not going to attend. Okay? So he made a choice, what I call Trump 1.0, where he didn't attend any of the hearings or trials, and you see how that went for him. He lost, $5.5 million. He wouldn't have won had he showed up, but I'm sure the disdain of not showing up for a woman who claims and successfully proved that she was raped didn't go over well with that jury, that first jury. And so that was the reason he didn't go. And then he threatened, when the case was going south quick, when E. Jean Carroll did, as a heroine, did a masterful, courageous job in testifying, and nobody backed up any part of Trump's defense, he threatened to come back. And the judge, this same Judge Kaplan, called his bluff and said to Tacopina, the lawyer representing Donald Trump, your client wants to testify. I hear he wants to testify. I'll make time for him to testify. It has to be tomorrow. And then Donald Trump said, "Oh, sorry, I'm in Scotland at a ribbon cutting for one of my golf courses." I'm not kidding. And he didn't show up. And the judge says, "All right, put it on the record that he's not arriving. He was given the opportunity to testify, and he elected not to do it." And Joe Tacopina looked at the judge and said, "I can't control my client. You know who I'm representing." It's all on the record. And so the judge has that as a background. Donald Trump not participating in his prior trial. And so why should anybody bend over backwards to help him now, despite the fact that he lost his mother-in-law? Especially when the judge made it clear in the order, and in this new order I'm going to read to you, that he's free to attend any day and not attend any day. It's not like a criminal trial where Donald Trump has to show up every day. In fact, there's plenty of cases I've been involved with where lawyers or witnesses or even a defendant or plaintiff can't make a certain day of a long trial, and you just explain it to the jury. You tell them they're excused from court today and it shouldn't be held against them. You don't have to say anything maudlin, like, "Oh, Donald Trump's mother-in-law died and that's why he's not here," because it's probably not the reason why he's not there. But you could say he's been excused by the court and you're not to hold that against him, and you move on in the trial day. And that's what the judge is prepared to do on the moment in time where Donald Trump can't make it. Now, let me line it up with the actual process that's going to happen as a little bit of a primer for Tuesday, the start of the trial. This trial is going to go fast, by the way. The original trial to prove liability took about 2 weeks. They had about 7 or 8 witnesses, including E. Jean Carroll. Donald Trump, of course, didn't testify. No experts on his side, and that was it. Jury selection in federal court goes very fast. Jury selection in state court goes much slower. In federal court, the judge, and we're in federal court for this E. Jean Carroll case, does the heavy lifting on jury selection. It's a process we call voir dire, where you're asking the questions of the jury, the prospective jury, the jury panel, or veneer we call it, and listening to their responses by a numbered jury. You then take notes and figure out who can't, who's going to be excused and who's going to stay and who's got problems and who's pro-Trump and who's pro-Biden, and who loves E. Jean Carroll and who, whatever it is. You spend an afternoon interviewing, without embarrassing them, each of the jurors. Now, let me remind you, this jury is an anonymous jury. Because Judge Kaplan has already ruled that in the E. Jean Carroll case, they need protection from the attacks and the vitriol and the chaos that's sowed by Donald Trump. So nobody should be surprised. We're going to know numbers, and we're going to know background, and we're going to know, where these people work and gender, but we're not going to know names, and we're not going to see their faces at all, even by the sketch artists, because this is not televised, nor is the audio recorded. Only people in the room, and we're going to try to get people from MeidasTouch in the room to be able to report back to Legal AF, and so we can do our analysis. But the judge does the jury selection. Last time it took him 1 day to pick a jury. 1 day. Meaning Tuesday, they're going to pull down 40 or 50 people down that have already been told weeks ago that they're going to have to show up on Tuesday for a jury selection process, regular jury, petit jury selection process in the Southern District of New York down at the courthouse. There's a lot of juries going on at that time, but it's a pretty good shot that if you got a jury notice for Tuesday, Southern District, you might be asked to serve on the Trump case. And it's not going to go that long. It's not a criminal case. It's going to go, if it goes 10 days, I'd be surprised. And jury selection is going to go a day, which takes up all of Tuesday. When the lawyers are going to show up, there's going to be a lot of fireworks in the very beginning over rulings the judge has made about evidence, about what Trump can and can't do, what Trump can't and can't say, what the defense's case can and can't be, because he's already ruled you're not retrying the case of whether she was raped. It was already decided that she was by a jury. So you can't do that, Mr. Trump. So that'll go on for an hour or two. Then they're going to start calling the jury down because the jury is tapping its foot, if anybody that served on a jury, in a kind of waiting room, and they start bringing them in, right? And then the judge does the first hour asking questions and dismissing people, right? And then you're left with, I don't know, let's say you're left with 25 or 30 people. 25 or 30 people. The lawyers have the key information about those people based on questionnaires that they filled out and questions that were answered by them in the courtroom. And then with their charts, you literally make a chart. The lawyers then have, I think, three challenges, 3 peremptory challenges apiece, and that's it. And so they'll say to the defense, who do you want to strike from this remaining group of 30 that I've narrowed it down from 50? And they'll say 1, 2, 3, whatever the numbers are, 6, 22, and 19. And who do you want, plaintiff, to be dismissed? And they'll say, oh, we want 1, 7, and 12. Okay. And then from there, sequentially, as they filled into the box, he'll pick his, I think here he's going to have to do, I think it's 6 plus a couple of alternates. So it'll be, I'm trying to make sure I get the number right for you all. Yeah, it was a 6-person jury. So it could be about 9 people that are ultimately selected. And by Tuesday, they're going to be selected. And then they're going to be given their initial jury instructions, not the ones before they deliberate, but sort of things. You're now the jury, and you're going to hear evidence, and argument of lawyers is not evidence, and I'm the judge, and I instruct you on the law. All the things for those that have never done jury selection or been picked that go on. That'll take up all of Tuesday. I'm sure he'll let them go home early because the next thing up for grabs is the opening statements, and he won't start an opening statement and not finish it. He likes them to go home 5:30 on a Tuesday. So they'll come back bright and early on Wednesday. The funeral is Thursday. Wednesday to do openings. So openings will be complete on Wednesday before Donald Trump has to go to the funeral. And I know the judge knows that. So Wednesday opening statements, hour and a half, couple hours per side. They'll be done by lunch. I would assume maybe a break and then a lunch and then they're done. But by early afternoon, the opening statements are going to be done. And the first witness for the plaintiff is going to be on the stand. I would presume that's going to be E. Jean Carroll because the jury needs to hear from E. Jean Carroll. And then she's going to take most of, if not all of, Wednesday. And then cross-examination falling over to Thursday. Now, that's where the conflict comes in, I guess, in Donald Trump's mind, is that the cross-examination of E. Jean Carroll could still be going on Thursday when he's at the funeral. But who cares? He's not cross-examining them. I know he likes to be a lawyer and threaten to fire all of them and do the closing and the opening and he threatens all of that. But other than blurting out crap like he did at the New York Attorney General case last week in a moment of Festivus where he was just from the old Seinfeld show where he was just airing grievances, and then sat back down. He doesn't have a real major role. If his lawyers don't know how to cross-examine E. Jean Carroll by this point, the fact that this is the second trial of E. Jean Carroll, they've already deposed her. They know the case that's going to be presented. Donald Trump whispering in their ear and making faces is not going to help them. and the jury will just be told, Mr. Trump has been excused for today. It's not a poor reflection on him, and whatever the judge will say to make sure the jury doesn't take it out on him. If Donald Trump thinks this is the thing that the jury, him not being there for the mother-in-law's funeral, is the thing that's going to lead him to lose the trial, he's going to lose the trial because a jury in New York of college-educated and other thinking people, who are going to listen to the authentic testimony of those that matter and expert witnesses, are going to award E. Jean Carroll a big sum of money. They all know who Donald Trump is. Donald Trump thinks people don't know who he is at this point, and that he's been indicted 91 times. So this whole fake conflict that Donald Trump has created in order to gain some sort of sympathy, but that's not why he's doing it. I'm going to read you the order, then I'm going to tell you what Donald Trump did, which is what we thought he would do, which is try to attack the judge and say all the things outside the courtroom, because he's not gagged, that he could never say inside the courtroom, to try to influence a jury that hasn't yet been selected. Remember that. These statements that Donald Trump is making, attacking E. Jean Carroll and attacking the judge and the process and the system, he knows, because he's been told in a court order, that he can't say any of that inside the courtroom in testimony, nor can his lawyers at any time. So what's he trying to do? He's trying to change the hearts and minds of future jurors. He's in a way jury tampering. And we'll see what the judge has to say about all that when they get together on Tuesday about the statements that were made. I mean, Judge Kaplan was already pissed off and almost threw the book at Donald Trump and his children when Donald Trump said that he would appear at the first trial, didn't testify, but instead he and his sons took to social media to bash E. Jean Carroll. The judge did not like that. He's not going to like this new bashing to try to influence the new jury either. But let me read first the order, and then I'll read you what Donald Trump said, and then we'll sort of go from there. So firstly, here's the order, just so everybody's, we're all sort of on the same page. Judge already earlier in the week had said not stopping the trial. And he says, I'll issue a memo so you understand why, and you guys can respond in the meantime. Here's the order. Memorandum and order re postponement request, Lewis Kaplan, District Judge. The court on Friday night denied defendant's latest last-minute request to postpone the start of the trial, this time for a week, as the defendant planned to travel to Florida on Wednesday and attend his mother-in-law's funeral on Thursday. Court then stated that a memorandum would follow and now fulfills that promise. What he's referring to there as the latest last-minute request is Donald Trump took an appeal to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, arguing that he had presidential immunity and he was allowed to defame her while he was president of the United States. Second Circuit, which sits over all New York federal courts, said no way, and you have waived your right to raise that issue because you waited, and your lawyers, Alina Habba, waited 3 years to raise presidential immunity, which is almost unfathomable. But you did, and Donald Trump did not, shock of all shocks, did not take an emergency appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court to try to stop the case on Tuesday. He didn't do it because he knows he was going to lose the U.S. Supreme Court level on that issue, and he had already chastised Jack Smith, the special counsel, for trying to take an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court on an immunity issue. So even he thought that was a little bit, hypocrisy couldn't be squared. So that's what the judge is referring to there. And then the judge goes on substantively. On January 12th, 2024, 3 days after the announcement of the death of Mrs. Trump's mother and the day before the defendant's request, his counsel informed the court by email that Mr. Trump would attend the trial. In other words, she had already died, right? And the day before the request came in on Friday night, so by Thursday, the mother-in-law had died, and Donald Trump was attending the trial, according to the lawyers for Donald Trump, who were asked. The trial date in this case was set 7 months ago. A jury panel was summoned some time ago. A postponement would disrupt and inconvenience prospective jurors, counsel, court staff, security arrangements, and likely cause other logistical and scheduling problems, similar to what Trump said was the reason he didn't go to the first trial. Accordingly, the court denied the request, but noted that the defendant is free to attend the funeral, the trial, or both. You can do both. And then he dropped a footnote. And in the footnote, Kaplan had a little bit of fun. because he had been informed, and it's public record, that Donald Trump wasn't going to a funeral on Wednesday night. He was in Florida. He was going to a fundraiser a campaign appearance in New Hampshire in the opposite direction during the primary. So if he can get from New Hampshire at the top of the country to Florida at the bottom of the country in time to make the funeral, he can go to the funeral on Thursday and hightail it back and do a flip turn and get back to New York, which is even closer, in time for the trial. And so he pointed out the court subsequently learned that usually indicates, let me translate federal court speak. That means I got misled by other people and I've been had. And I don't like that. I don't know why I'm doing Foghorn Leghorn from the Warner Brothers cartoons for that voice, but that's what that judge means. The court subsequently learned that Mr. Trump has scheduled a campaign appearance at 7 p.m. on Wednesday in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, citing to his own website that the court visited on January 14, 2024, when he wrote the order. In the event, the judge gave him a little bit of, ice and winter. He said, in the event that Trump rests his defense case on Thursday, January 18th, right, that the case would be over in 2 days, subject only to Mr. Trump's testimony. Like, they were going to have him testify, but he's not there and he's at the funeral. Then the court would grant a continuance until Monday just for the purposes of having Trump testify. Now, think about this. I said this case is going to be a high velocity. It's not going to take very long to try. I'm not sure that means 2 days, although it only took 3 days, just to give some sort of a framework here. In the Ruby Freeman and Shea Moss Fulton County, Georgia election interference case, it only took 3.5 days for them to try the entire case against Rudy Giuliani, who did not testify, and the jury to return a $148 million verdict. E. Jean Carroll is using the same expert on damages, by the way. So there aren't a lot of witnesses on damages. It's like an expert, E. Jean Carroll, and maybe one other witness, and then Donald Trump, if he wants to testify, about damages only. So it really, the judge is right. It really could be over by Thursday. And what he's saying is, if on the bullseye, the moment when the case is turned to the defense and they want to really put on Donald Trump and he's really at the funeral and not doing something else, he'll roll the trial over to Monday, calling Donald Trump's bluff again. So what do you have? You have the example of Donald Trump lying to a court, the court figuring it out, the court telling him the trial goes on as planned, me outlining how the trial is going to work from Tuesday to Thursday, and the judge calling his bluff again about whether he's going to testify at all. If you're going to testify, it happens to be at the moment I need you. You happen to be at the funeral. You're a pallbearer, whatever you're doing. I'll roll it till Monday. Other than that, this case will end on Thursday with the jury getting the case, and I predict the jury will return a verdict, if that happens, by Friday. And Friday well before 5 o'clock. It's some gigantic number against Donald Trump in the tens of millions of dollars. You'll know if you follow Legal AF on the MeidasTouch network. It's a podcast that the title means exactly what it says. We do it Wednesdays and Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern time on this YouTube channel and then on audio podcast platforms of your choice. Don't turn that dial. You're already on the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. So until my next hot take, and give me a thumbs up for this one and a comment. It helps with the ratings, keeps the lights on, as we like to say. Till my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.